too much because this is all about your wisdom and your stories and sharing your experience and knowledge with us. But I just really appreciate your affirmative response when I invited you to come and speak. And this is the beginning of many more such opportunities to share each other's knowledge. Okay. Ngā mihi, ngā te parau.
Kia ora, Kiri. Thank you for the invite. Kia ora, everyone. My name is Paora Crawford Moyle. Ko he kurangi te maunga, ko awatiri te awa, ko rauta te waka, ko Ngāti Parau te iwi. Ko tūwhaka iri ora te tangata, ko hea ne rupe te marae. Ko Crawford te ingoa whānau, ko Paora Moyle toko ingoa. Te hei Māori ora. I'm really happy to be here. I'm not even nervous, actually, to speak to you all. It's good practice, really. I accepted the offer to come and speak. I didn't have a fancy presentation, or PowerPoint to offer you in such short notice, but I am the point of power, and that's what I bring today. Kia ora, my friend. Lovely to see you. So the topic is how to transform or, oh, kia ora. How cool. Just noting a few old friends, not that they're old, coming in to support the kaupapa. Anyway, my name is Paora Crawford Moyle. I am a social worker, a veteran of 30 years in social work. I was raised in state care. I'm passionate about, I know you're going to be looking at all the photos. They're mostly family, they're mostly me in my lifetime, but it is around a life story, really, and that's what I'm presenting today. I was raised in state care. I had siblings with me, and we experienced things that children are not supposed to experience. And I'm going to go through several things, have to do it quite quickly because there's a lot to cover. So really today is about an introductory kind of overview of everything that I've done in my lifetime to try and contribute to the betterment or the better treatment of our children that have to go through state interventions. Okay. I wanted to talk about my background a little bit. So I've said that I was raised in state care with my siblings, and we experienced things that children are not always supposed to experience. And whilst I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about all of my state care survivor brothers and sisters who have been up presenting to the Abuse and Care Royal Commission this last week, and some of the horrific stories so horrific that most general Joe population can't hear them and don't believe them. But it takes an enormous amount of courage for them to get up and tell their stories. And the one thing that they all stay the same, when people are saying, oh, you just want a payout, or you just want a pat on the back, or you just want validation, poor you. Actually, what they want is the system to change the way in which some of our children experience state care. And that's very real. And that's why I'm speaking before you. Because it's the love of my brothers and my sister and myself and all of my whāngai siblings that I experienced in state care, the treatment that we received, and that's still happening today. It's still happening. And most people don't understand the detail or the degree to which that impacts a child. And we all grew up with PSD, a type of trauma, intergenerational trauma. I haven't really got the time to go into what that is, but it's a bit like battered wife syndrome, isn't it? It's the children's form of it, and there are parts of those children that never grow up past, how we're supposed to develop into fully competent, contributing citizens. There are parts of children that are taken from them that they never fully develop into adulthood. Consequently, when you, for example, you're all grown up, you go to have a relationship, your little person comes out often, and it's the hurt person, and that often is what presents in a relationship, a close relationship. They want to be married and have children and be happily ever after with a partner. That's fraught with difficulties, more so had they not been harmed. Now, there are many reasons why children are brought into the custody of the state, but there are also just as many reasons why they didn't need to be. So my point today is, whilst we work to try and keep children safe and have to uplift them from unsafe situations sometimes, my experience, my 30 years in social work, I have firsthand seen where there are many times, just as many times, that children should not or unnecessarily uplifted away from their families. And from the survivors' testimonies and from the research that's coming out, Elizabeth Stanley's research, 2016, what they're all saying is, had we been able to stay connected with our wider family group, we would have done a whole lot better. See, most people who hear all the horrible stories about, particularly how Māori kill off their babies, the first thing that people think about is it translates across the board. If people kill their children, then they can't be trusted to look after any children. When you're Māori and you know who your extended people are, you know who the ones that shouldn't have children are, but there are so many more within a whānau group that are quite capable of bringing up our own children. The thing that's not happening is that the care or the trust and responsibility has not been given over by the state to whānau who are very good at bringing up children. And that's one of the things that we're trying to talk about and change in the system at the moment. So anyway, the whole thing about what we experienced in state care taught me what not to do to children. And consequently, I wanted to teach other people what they weren't getting were the voices of children, their insider experience is true knowledge, and it's valuable. And we need to hear the voices of children. And what we're not doing is engaging with them enough. And even as adults who have been harmed as children, they fight to have their voices heard by the leaders there who are at the change table trying to review Ōranga Tamariki and tinker with the system and change this and change that. And the truths of the survivors with lived experience have to fight to be at the table, to be heard and go, no, that's not going to work. And this is why it's not going to work, because it didn't work back then. And an example at the moment that I've been harping on about on social media is, why are we strip searching children? Why do you need to strip search a child? The argument comes back, well, they may have something on them when they're coming into residence that could be harmful to them, or if they're suicidal, they might take their lives. And my argument is, it doesn't matter where you put a child. If they're going to self-harm, if they're going to take their lives, they will find whatever tools they need to do that. So strip searching them to see if they've got something on them is not an argument, and it's not truthful, and the children will tell you that it harms their autonomy, that they feel unloved, uncared for, they feel stripped of their dignity, they have no power, and that's what it's designed to do. And I hear Kelvin Davis, who's the Minister for Children this week, talking up about, well, the same people that critique how we treat children, you know, strip searching them, will be the same ones that will argue, well, you didn't do enough if a child harms himself. He has the power to stop that kind of behaviour to our young people right now, but he's going to phase it out by the end of the year. I'm saying that how we treat children has a lasting impact on their lives. And when you've got survivors coming forward in the same week that we're hearing about children being strip searched, saying, at 12 years old, I haven't even menstruated yet, but they strip searched me, and then they searched deeper, and then they took more from me. Why do we even need to do that kind of psychological harm to young people? And so that's one of the things that I talk about that we have to change. If the state is saying that they want to be, that they have the responsibility to be parents to children that can't be in their own homes, that they're taken from their homes, put into state care, then be a parent. Be transparent in the way that you do that. Measure the way children are, how they are, what their needs are, their educational needs, it's more than just putting clothes on their back or putting a roof over their head. Children need to be loved. They need to be able to see that they are important, reflected back to them. And yeah, that's not happening in some of the children's homes that are still open from the 90s, the 80s, and the 70s, where a lot of the abuse that's being talked about now happened. And we're still sending children there. Anyway, like I said, I hadn't prepared a PowerPoint or even what I was going to say to you all, but I think the message is we need to be listening to those with lived experience. And it's in this, it's the same vein as when you've got this, did you know that half the children in state care have disabilities? They have neurological disorders, they have different kinds of disorders. A lot of them are taken because away from their parents because of disabilities, and perceive that parents can't look after those children properly. One of the loneliest things in the world is to take those children away from all that they know and put them with strangers, because the white saviourist rhetoric, belief, the underpinning of everything is you can save a child by plucking them away from the bad people, the people that can't look after them properly. They've got all sorts of social problems. There's a risk to those children in the future. Let's save them and put them over here with the nice white middle class, better abled people. And that's what Māori are fighting out about. Stop taking our babies. We don't want to live as Pākehā. We want to live as Māori in our country under Te Tiriti, which guaranteed that two people could come together. We're not all one people, we're one nation, but we live distinctly different. And we have a right under Te Tiriti to make our own decisions, our own determining of what the needs of our children are. And when you have white saviourist thinking saying, well, I don't trust that really Māori can do that because they do this, 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 and this. And you've got our parliamentarians in the big house at the moment dogging Māori all over the place, so that two of our leaders have to stand up and really protect themselves from racism, blatant racism. There's a lot of institutional racism inside child protection, and that's one of the reasons I decided I was going to stand up, because children are treated differently based on race inside child protection and youth justice. I've been a social worker for many years, which means I've worked as a youth justice social worker, a child protection social worker, and I've also been an FGC coordinator, family group conferencing coordinator. They're three different rounds, but they all work for the state. They all work for the machinery. And the one thing that comes out of that is children will say, we're not involved enough. You don't listen to us. When I don't want to go over there, you don't listen to me. And when you put me over there and I run away, you blame me. I don't want to stay with those people. I want to go home. I want to be as close to my whānau or my family or my community, my school, my friends, my church, as much as possible. I don't know, why don't we remove the bad hearers, put them somewhere and support them, and leave the children where they are? You know, same with women. Why do women and their children have to go to refuges? Why aren't the partners plucked out and put somewhere and supported? So one of the points that I'm making at the moment is lived experience is really important, and our disability whānau at the moment are fighting with those that are making decisions on their behalf, and there's this I know best. Disability, people with disabilities, they live and breathe this every day, and they deserve to be at the table. They deserve to be at the top table and being a part of making nothing about us without us. And that translates across every spectrum. Doesn't matter what area you're working in. And my positioning is that I am pro-Māori. I'm pro-women and children, and we do have childism going on in this country. And I'm pro-takatapuhi. And those are quite a few fields to be in, but the intersectionality that comes into play when you are advocating or activating is inspiring, and you come across survivors in all different areas. I think I'm inspired by people who are survivors and never stop fighting to have a voice. Come on. That's my Māoriness comes to play. When somebody comes in the door, I stop talking so that they can sit down and feel okay. Anyway, I've lost my notes. I'm sure that there are two Indigenous women from Canada, and they fight in their areas too, where their children were taken from their families, from the women, from their homes, and put into residential schools. And they are from that area. So that's another good thing, being an activist in the area of child protection and trying to keep children connected with their own people, as you get to meet amazing, and usually women from other countries. And I've had the privilege of being able to do that. More recently, so when I worked as a social worker, there was a couple of things that happened that I want to tell you about. There's this thing that happens, the dump and run. That's when social workers don't have enough time. They don't have enough resourcing to really look after children properly. So the difficult ones, they dump in a placement and they run. So the kids call it dump and run. You just dump and run and leave us. Or they're the hard basket kids. They're the ones that won't stay put and they keep running. And at 5 o'clock on a Friday night, you don't want to be running around after kids. You want to be going home to your own family. So you place kids in the lowest, the not so nice, the placements that you keep away from because you know that they're dodgy. I've seen children placed with pedophiles, and I've complained about it. And instead of it being investigated and looked at why, what happens? It gets put under cover. When you're a whistleblower, like I became in child protection, because I couldn't stand these children. Beautiful kids being placed with bad people that you know are bad. And you whistleblow and go, 3 brothers that had just been placed with that man, they're unsafe. And it gets put under the carpet, and 20 years later, you're still talking about that particular case. And the minister of Ōranga Tamariki publicly says something along the lines of, well, we've got no reference or complaint recorded at that time, Paora, so you didn't actually make a complaint. It goes away. And time after time, you whistleblow, and you know, the kids that talk about going to whakapākari or whakatohia, to these different places where children were abused, and they're not believed. And they keep on sending those children there, and they're not believed. And the children come back, and I go, how was it? And they go, they strip searched us. They beat us up. They made the other kids do it to us. It's a places of cruelty that weren't monitored. The caregivers were not vetted properly. It's not a place of love and care and program and strengthening. These were places where children were sent to be bastardized, basically. And people that were employed there were paid peanuts, and you get monkeys. And many years later, you get what we have at the moment, which is the Abuse and Care Royal Commission. It's so vast, so many people were harmed, they can't fathom it. And that you get a $56 million blowout because the scope just blows. Kiri, am I doing something wrong? I'm not staying on the kaupapa. You're a good girl, thank you. So I'm talking about the hard basket kids and the dangerous placements. I'm talking about dump and run and then brown burnout. So when you work with a whole lot of Māori whānau, and it's been majorly, it's 67% that come through the door are Māori families. When there's only a couple of Māori people in a particular team, you get all the hard basket cases. You've got double and triple the amount, because the Pākehā social workers don't know how to work with the hard whānau. You know, you don't rock up to the door in some of those places, you're going to get kicked out, man. You've got to know how to treat, you know, approach and treat people well, because they're defensive. They don't trust when you come looking for their children to take them. I suffered brown burnout, and in the end, when I was trying to change things from the inside and alert, which you're supposed to do as a social worker, you're supposed to mandatorily show and report when children are being harmed. We were harming them inside the system, and we weren't allowed to report. You get shut down, or you get the letter. Anyway, I became really unpopular, and I didn't stay in child protection. And when I came out of it, I was so, again, traumatized, because my whole life as a little E, I was trying to call out, trying to whistleblow what was happening to us as children. And, you know, they didn't believe me. They said, you're a shit stirrer. You're a nasty little girl who just wants to hurt good people. You're inbred. Your parents should never have got together, because, you know, interracial unions were frowned upon back in those days, and it made you something of a mutt. And that's when I tried to say, this is happening to my brothers, or this is happening to me, and we're getting shifted around. And nobody really wanted to take it on board because they believed children who came from broken homes and parents who were, you know, dodgy and there was family violence there, somehow the children got what they asked for. Somehow the children invited that kind of behaviour to not be believed. It's one of the loneliest places to be, to want to call out that this is happening to help save children and you are not believed by your current leaders. When you're an activist for 30 years and you want to be at the change table as a survivor, and they don't want you there because you know too much. You're too big-mouthed. You know too much detail. We're trying to keep this in control. We don't want it to be any wider than it already is. So I got into studying because I thought, oh, flip yous, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to go and study. I'm not an academic. I'm a frontline social worker. I'm just a simple person who just wanted to raise my child. I got into studying, and I found that I could, you have to learn a whole new language and learn how to write and write in an academic way. It took me years. I'm still studying now, and I'm just about to do, well, I'm about halfway through a PhD. And actually, I'm very good at writing. I didn't think I was before because it was such a, like, it's a monumental thing when you're just a frontline. I didn't even finish school properly, you know, but the only reason I'm doing it is because when I get it, I got the tohu, I got the PhD. They won't be sending me any more letters. They'll be calling me doctor, you know. So it's a way of having a voice, a legitimacy, because I'm not legitimate. I'm not an expert as a survivor. But I know more about child protection and what happens and what happened than any one of those leaders, any one of the dames and sirs, the Woodard Gardeners, the Matthew Tutakis, the Taumaha leaders on the Abuse and Care Royal Commission. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. After I left care, one of the things that I did, and this is a plug for my gang whānau. When people hear me talk about gangs, they go, no, not you, you're an academic. Good thing that they uplifted you off your family, eh? Because now, you know, you're getting a PhD. One of the things that I did too, when I left state care and I was 18, first thing I did, went straight into, I needed a family base, a protectant, because they just leave you. Once you care out, you're on your own. If you've got no job and you've got no prospects or roof over your head, like, what do you do? So I hooked up with a mongrel mob member, or a prospect is what, not quite the patched, but he's the father of my only child. I was loyal. The relationship was violent, but I couldn't leave because I was damned if I do and damned if I don't. You can't leave when you are loyal to your whānau, to your family. And I was safer there. I felt safer in that group than I did outside of that, because nobody wants to wrap around somebody who's been through state care. And you can't talk to anybody about what happened to you because they just turn away from it. It's too much for them. But anyway, I found a safety of care with my partner and his fellow members. I lost 2 children to that relationship. One time he had done something really wrong to his mates, And you can't do that to the brothers. You can't do that to one another. They came after him. He doesn't know that I did this, but I took the hit for him. He was away when they turned up. I took the hit for him. And as a result, I lost the child I was carrying. And most people don't know that about me. That's still a pain that I carry, because I often wonder what those two babies would have been like had they grown up. And sometimes I still feel them and see them, you know. I was just sharing with Kitty, my surviving son, his firstborn. Well, everybody loves their grandchildren, but he's just adorable. And I've spent the last 2.5 years with him, and it's the most healing time ever. But I look to him as an inspiration and why I do what I do. And you might, oh, it's my mum and dad. Oh. And me building, I was a builder at some stage. I was pretty good at it too. I don't need that anymore, mate. I wanted to remember my children that I lost because very recently I was challenged about my loyalty to my Mungal mob past and my affiliation with them. I was challenged that I was not faithful, that I was not loyal to them, that I didn't give I am. You can't, I can't think of a greater way of paying homage to that time than suffering myself. It's horrible when someone says to you, you're a sellout. I've never been a sellout. I protected my family and the wider family at that time. It's still something I'm getting over. I'll never live it down. I guess it'll always be a part of me. But when somebody says to me that I'm not enough, I can say that I am. I know that I am. And I walk tall with that. And I'm glad those babies didn't come through at the time, because I don't think that it would have been safe. Anyway, I've gone on to raise my son. I left that relationship and I raised my son to the best of my ability, and he's turned out to be a really marvellous young man. Oh, he's older now, he's 33. And I'm proud of him, and I'm proud of me. And I want to keep giving to this area to change the way. I fundamentally believe that the state can't take care of Māori children, doesn't keep them safe. In 2015, the report that came out of the Children for Commissioners said quite clearly, taking children away from their families and putting them into state care, there is no guarantee that they're any safer here than they were from. But I still agree that there's times when we absolutely need to uplift children. What I'm saying is, don't culturally disconnect them, because in years to come, those children grow up to be, adults and go, the most painful, the most hurtful thing wasn't the abuse, was that you disconnected us from our own people. Māori can take care of their own. This government needs to work in partnership, and I don't mean the state being the bigger partner and you guys being the little ones, and we'll just change a white bureaucracy into a brown bureaucracy and transfer all the problems over to you. What I'm wanting to work towards now is a transitional Māori authority, working with people to localise and support them, looking at their needs right across the board. What do children need? What are the causal factors that make them come to the notice of the state? Poverty, education, not shoes on their feet, health reasons, abuse at home, I believe that a bottom-up approach is what's required now, and government, New Zealand, needs to trust tangata whenua to be able to take care of their own child protection, child care needs right across the board. And that's the model that I want to be working towards, not child centrism, which is to take the children away from the family. So that's where I am at the moment, working with a group of people who hopefully will be able to work with some of our leaders and put something in place that moves more towards trusting Māori to take care of their own. I think I've covered just about everything. There's my boy. Anyway, I've loved being a parent. I'm loving being a grandparent, and I think there's another one on the way. So that's a really good thing to hear. And I thank you all for coming along and listening to me. And hopefully you've got something from my all over the place kōrero. But there are things that you can do too. It's if you feel in yourself that you have some of those thoughts around not trusting Māori to take care of their own, then you've got some work to do. And I would challenge you to become an ally and not be afraid of sharing, because we've shared with you. My mother, my mother's mother, my mother's before her, you all used to live on the whenua. We only own less than 5% of our whenua now, because it's all gone to white farmers and Pākehā interests. When you don't have any of that, you become really pōhara, and you need your connection to the land, and we need our children to be connected to the land. And I believe that there's enough for all of us here to share. And that's what I live for, that's what I stand for. And tino rangatira-tanga actually means something. And I would encourage everybody to educate themselves a little bit more about New Zealand history, and to really search if you've got some fears going on inside of you, where they come from. Anyway, that's my kōrero today, folks. Thank you all for coming.
Kia ora, Paora. Beck Bear here, one of your Facebook groupies, so don't stop ranting, it's great. Kia ora, everyone. I also have skin in the game in that my mother was stolen and closed stranger adopted into a whānau that horrendously abused and raped her for much of her life. And as a result, she is a suicide survivor. And I have worked my whole life with the vicarious trauma that is mine. I jumped through the hoops and got a PhD also, and that was to work in the Mental Health and Addiction Inquiry, Suicide Mortality Review Committee, Child Youth Mortality Review Committee, and now the Royal Commission into Abuse and State Care.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so really I'm here when I saw you that you were speaking today, Paora, because I know a little bit of when I get into these spaces, every second phrase I say is te tiriti. I bring in Y2915, Manawahine claim. I do everything I can to partner with Māori and survivor voice and disabled and people. It's the minority. It's just, like, seems so simple to say to you, like, top 3 tips. I've been back in there in the Royal Commission now for, 5 months, and I'm feeling burnt out.
Yeah.
It's a lonely path. Yeah, and I guess it's great to have Whanona, people that you can, sort of lean on. But I guess, what would your advice to be? I'm assuming I'm Pākehā, that's how I affiliate, because I don't know anything different from my whakapapa, but I see the answers to so many of our societal problems in Te Ao Māori. So yeah, that's all. What would you advise to me at this time?
Keep on doing what you're doing. Never give up. My son was 8 years old. He said to me, Mum, he was looking at me and he knew that I was down, and he said, you're my hero. Everything that you do, the path that you walk is it matters, Mum. How would we know what it's like if you didn't walk that path, if you didn't talk about how that felt for you? How would we know what it's like for kids in care? And in that moment, I realised that he was reflecting back to me what I had demonstrated to him his whole life, that the journey, the hardest journeys, are there to teach us about our own humanity and what we most need to learn about ourselves. If we're not doing that, we're not really living. So you keep on doing what you're doing. It matters. You matter. The Royal Commission matters. And the fact that they're not looking after our survivors enough and that people are burning out says a lot about what you need to be doing. And we give you information all the time about how to work with survivors. You need to take care of yourself. Pause a lot. Self-love is the most important thing that you can self-care, self-love, and to be feeding that all of the time, and to hang out on your own sometimes. Yeah. Just hats off to you. I pay homage and respect what you're doing. Come on, somebody say hello to me. Come on, up the back there.
Kia ora e hoa.
Oh,
It's nice to see you.
Georgie.
I've got a hug for you after.
Yeah.
I guess I mean, you know, I feel like I've followed your journey and walked a little bit behind you, watching it in awe for 30 years, maybe 25. And I wonder, and I've seen your frustration at that, you know, knowing what's wrong and nobody listening. I've seen it and I believe it. I see it all the time. What have been the breakthrough moments? What have been the highlights?
Highlights? Realisation that you can't please people all the time, that people have their own walks, and the reasons that they don't step up or have anything to say is because it's overwhelming for them. That they see the hurt, they recognise it. What do I friggin' do with all of that? I know that children were hurt mistakenly. What can I do about it now? Most people don't know what to do. They want to do something, they don't know what to do. And sometimes it's just too horrific, too overwhelming. But we can't stop loving our children. We can't stop making a difference and owning them. All children belong to us, not the neighbours, not the people down the street. Children belong to all of us. They're only on loan to their parents for a certain amount of time, and then they're their own little people. But they're part of the community, part of the collective. And if we had that kind of love going on at a local level, community level, remember when Chatty was little, we used to, who are the people in your neighbourhood? What he was talking about, you know, Sesame Street. It's getting to know the people in your neighbourhood, that they got it going on. They're the best experts on themselves. They know who so-and-so is. They know that when there's fighting on there, and a couple struggling and a child not going to school. I mean, Jacinta can talk about kindness, but we need to do a lot more. We need to activate. We really need to bring the resources back home to the people to help them. The moments, just realising that I live and I breathe and I'm grateful to be here, and life is precious, and do what you can whilst you can. And my children that I lost, the ones that I kept, I'm really proud of the parent. I broke the cycle. I got away from all of that. I still love my boy's father. I love him because he gave me that. The experience of what you learn from being in a very abusive relationship. The fact that you survive and come out of it, it helps me know what it's like for others. We've got to stop judging. We've got to stop gaslighting and blaming and putting the finger, because hurt people hurt others. And the only way we can really support one another to be better is by all wrapping around and loving, being compassionate, not accepting the bad shit that people do, but helping them learn how they can do it differently and what the consequences or the impact of how they are. If you impart hurt to another, you need to learn to understand it, but they need help to do that. And the only way we can give proper help is by caring about them, not ostracizing them, putting them away. Even though I said before, well, why don't we uplift the perpetrators and put them somewhere? I don't mean lock them up. I'm saying give them some proper care and wrap around programs where they get to understand themselves. Mostly we're just trying to love ourselves as people and be in the world the best that we can be. I'm going to stop there now. Nice to see you, Georgie.
Kia ora, and thank you for your presentation. It's been really powerful. I've got a question about the role of the health system. And I don't want to come across as being too bureaucratic here, but I see that state has caused monumental harm, and the health system's role in the commission of inquiry, but also in providing support to the survivors, proper healthcare. I mean, people would have been, their health probably would have been neglected, as well as dealing with all of the harm that's been inflicted. Is the health system, the Ministry of Health, involved in the commission? Is there a health input in responding to this? Because I haven't seen it from the outside, and that really concerns me.
Okay, well, I'm in touch with a few survivors, not all of them. There's quite a few survivors that are involved in supporting the Royal Commission to do the very best that they can do. It's really been thwarted. It's really been cut back very recently. Thank you, Minister. But just today, the survivors were saying the only support that they get post telling their testimony, which they've been pulled in to tell, and they tell everything, is 1 hour of counselling afterwards. That's all the budget allows for, if that. Yeah, well, plenty of people getting paid plenty of money, but the follow-up is appalling. It really milks them. It bastardizes them again. It just railroads them all. And all of that stuff comes up, and it just makes them feel unheard and little again. You may as well strip search the lot of them, because that's what they end up feeling like, that nothing that they contribute is really going anywhere or making any kind of ounce of difference. You need to validate people when they give over their stories. They need to be looked after. It needs to be followed up for a long period of time until they get to a place where they go, thank you, I'm okay now. I'm saying that majorly that's not happening. I'm not seeing a lot of survivors feeling great, like validated, like that the Royal Commission is giving back to them. Thank you for your contributions. Yeah, I don't see the health.
Is there anyone involved in the Ministry of Health who's got responsibility for engaging with the Commission?
Contracts.
Run or what it does. And
no, it was to find their own way, and the people that did the steering were the initial survivors who lobbied for the Royal Commission, lobbied long and hard. They're the ones that gave the input into what the Royal Commission would need to set up in order to provide, because you can't be a Royal Commission with anything to investigate if you're not getting the testimonies of those that you're investigating.
Just to total what you're saying, because my mama is a contributor to the inquiry also, so I have that, alongside her. And I would say that, like you were saying, the minority of people are not more traumatized by the process of contributing, often because the sort of care and support they require is not, so it's quite prescriptive. So it doesn't necessarily meet their needs. And it's quite personality dependent. So who my mum had her story listened to by that interaction was really positive for her, but then she had a follow-up that was traumatizing again. So yeah, I think it's under duress is what it would be my perspective.
A partial answer for you, which makes me feel slightly old, was that when David Rankin became the doctor at the Ministry of Health responsible for these children, for the first time, he insisted that every child that was taken into state care had a physical health assessment and an education assessment. So that was not happening until, and I can't remember the exact date, it must be about 20 years ago. But there were, and what he was finding, exactly what you're saying, was that a whole load of the children had disabilities that no one had actually diagnosed or done anything about. And that the process up until that time had just been they'd gone into state care and nothing. Now, certainly, I was involved with advising for some of the work that he was doing, and I think he did a really good job of saying, we can't do it like this, but I've got no idea to what extent that was implemented and followed through and built on, because I think that a health focus for these children is one way in which, if you like, the whistle can get blown, in that there's another stream of people involved in the care, potentially. And yeah, there's problems with all of that. I'm not saying we're terribly good at this, but it just seemed that at the time that was quite a significant shift for someone to say, no, these are health problems. They're not social problems. Or maybe
Oh, Kitty. I just want to take a comment to that, Ben. I was in the ministry at that period. Right. Yeah. And the Ministry of Health was kicking, avoiding, fighting tooth and nail not to provide those assessments. They did not want to. And
why did they not want to provide them? Because it opens too many spokes in the cupboard. Children will tell you they don't want a whole reign of people in their lives. They don't want to have inspections and their body's gone over and have to be forced to tell what's been going on at home or at school or in the church. They don't want to have to. It's a nice thing to be implemented or suggested as something else we can do for these children. But what I'm saying is the children need to be involved and their consent. They and understand that these things are being offered to them. Now we've moved from those kinds of assessments to risk assessments. Risk assessments are scaled. So for example, if you're doing the Tuitui assessment framework, if you are a person that has an IQ of less than and you score poorly, at the total end of that scaling, practice says that you could be a risk to your child in the future. So we're going to uplift your children now. That has been happening so that if you could be a really good parent, do the best of your ability, but if you haven't got a high IQ, the assessments itself scales you poorly so that by the end, your, let's say, vulnerabilities outweigh your strengths. And the children, that is another way that children are being unnecessarily uplifted away from, and often children only have their mama. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's pretty much wrapping it up now, just so that people can get away and we can turn this thing off.
Ngā mihi kia koutou. Thank you all for coming. There's just a couple of things that I want to say in terms of my own experience as the daughter of a former ward of the state, that the generational violence that flows through our whakapapa comes from a place directly out of colonisation and has been furthered or further advanced by systems such as the state ward system, the incarceration of children in psychiatric care, and I firmly believe that the solutions lie in self-determination.
Yeah.
And in furthering our own, finding our own pathways and responses and healing practices that work for us as whakapapa. Now I started in the public sector as a benefits clerk in 1975, have been involved in many of the major developments in Māori health, the development commissions, the public health commissions, the formation of what used to be Hekete Hauora and its predecessors. And this Westminster parliamentary system and political process is an extension of colonisation. We can never hope, no matter all the royal inquiries, no matter all the funding that's put into hearing from the survivors of the state ward system. I don't call it state care because it wasn't and it never is. But that stuff goes on and on and on and on. And so maybe I'm cynical, but I've lost faith in this government. I've lost faith in the Westminster parliamentary process, and I've lost faith in the continuation of the perpetration of colonisation in this land. It is about tino rangatiratanga. It's about taking back our power. And it's about, for me, for you, about making a better world and building a better life for our mokopuna and those yet to come.
And it's about our leaders sharing the table, the change table with lived expertise and not being afraid of that.
Ngāmi. Here's a waiata for you from the Te Whanawhana Trust, our Takatapui Kapahaka group who can't be here today, couldn't be here today, but they've asked me to sing this for you. Ko te amorangi ki mua, te apaio ki muri, ngā reo are karanga mai ngā paupau o te whare, he mihi mai ana, ki ngā manu kōrero. Tuku a te reo kia rere, kia urere. Tuku a te reo kia rere, kia urere. Ko tāne whakapiri, ko papatua nuku e horo mai nei. Ko tāne whakapiri, ko papatua nuku e horo mai nei. E ngā hau e whā, tuku a te reo kia rere, kia urere, kia urere, kia urere, kia urere, kia urere.
Oh, that's the only time you get to do that.